has been consulting and helping clients avoid bad things from happening, most recently in dealing with risks associated with using vendors. With a speech titled, Vendor Risk Management, What? Please welcome Bud Telchin.
Ring-a-ding-a-ding. Hello, Bob Jones. Oh, hi, Marty. Marty is the head of the payroll company that I hired a few months ago to handle all the payroll records for our 500 employees in our company. What's going on, Marty? There's a problem? One of you guys took all of my employee records on a laptop home for the weekend and lost it in a cab? And now all the details are appearing on Facebook? Marty, you're not kidding, are you? Madam Toastmaster, fellow Rough Riders, and welcome guests. These are things that happen. Vendors occasionally cause trouble. Now, if I had been hired by Bob Jones to help with his vendor management program, I would have contacted Marty and said, let me see your policy on how laptops are permitted, or in fact not permitted, to carry customer data around. And I'd say, let me see your standard, that all of your laptops have full hard disk encryption. So even if they are lost, it would be nonsense to anyone who found them. Okay? That's what a vendor risk management program gets into. Now, the problem is that virtually every company and every business has dozens, if not hundreds, of vendors that they give important data to, often on a daily basis. Sometimes it's at the low end, like air conditioning repairmen. In the middle range, you might have a human resources department that you've outsourced because you didn't want to be bothered with the details of running your own HR department. So you're using ADP for payroll and all kinds of benefits processing, giving them incredibly personal information about your staff. Okay? At the high end, you could be sending hundreds or thousands of personnel or employee records, customer records, to a bank or to some other entity that's processing the data for you. And if you don't dig under the covers, you may not know what they're doing with it, or even where the data is being processed, whether it's in the US or in someplace offshore. Okay? So, how would you like to hear about the gory details of one of my clients and how they handle 500 of their critical vendors? I'm not seeing too many smiles. So let's scrap that. That's not going to work. Let's make it personal. Let's talk about your vendors. You say, what? Yes, every one of you has 15, 20, 30 vendors that you deal with all the time, ranging from your dry cleaner. You say, Bud, my dry cleaner, what risk is that? You give them a credit card? Now there's some risk with your dry cleaner. What about your housekeeper? What do they have access to? What about the nanny taking care of your children or your grandchildren? What's their background? What screening was done for them? What do they have access to? Those are the easy ones. Then you go up to your auto mechanic, who you're entrusting with your life to change the brakes on your car. What training have they undertaken? Okay? So you're starting to see a pattern. You've got a lot of vendors out there. And then certainly going to the really hard ones, like your family attorney, your accountant, and the doctors. The doctors have a tremendous amount of information. So how do you view this world of all these vendors who have you entrust with all kinds of confidential information to be comfortable that they're going to keep it protected. Okay? Well, here's a framework I'd like to offer to you. It's called CIA. Now, this has nothing to do with the government secret agency or anything. It's confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So if you can put those three lenses on when you're thinking about a vendor, how do they stack up in confidentiality of how they handle your data and limit access to it? Only the people who really need access to it, and that type of thing. Okay, so let's take an example. You go to your doctor for your annual checkup. You walk into the office, and there's these manila folders stacked up all over the place. The receptionist has a stack on her desk that's this high. They're falling over. In fact, some have fallen into the waiting room. And some of the people in the waiting room are reading these folders. Okay? Looking at all the personal information on patients that this doctor has. My goodness. You put on your confidentiality glasses and you say, whoa, there's something wrong here. There is no confidentiality. These people in the waiting room should not be looking at this personal data. Okay? That's just one way of addressing it. The second, of integrity. The doctor finally starts to examine you and opens the folder and says, I see you've been to Panama recently. And you go, oh, I've never been to Panama. He says, oh, I've got the wrong patient. I'm looking at someone else's folder. I'm sorry. Integrity in dealing with one of your vendors, that they're doing the right thing for you, that they know what they're doing, that they're giving you a high quality of service that you expect and that you need to demand. Okay? So then the doctor says, oh, he finds your correct thing and said, oh, I see that you've stopped taking your Synthroid. He said, well, no, that was 3 years ago. He said, oh, I'm on the wrong page. Another example that the integrity with this doctor is going downhill pretty quickly. The last thing is availability. Are all your records with this doctor who you've been seeing for 20 years, are they there in the back room on those manila folders that are falling all over the place? What if they had a fire? What if they had a water leak that damaged everything? So you say to the doctor, Doc, are you copying these things and backing them up somewhere? He'd probably say no. He'd say, well, can you? He said, well, I don't have time to do that. He said, well, okay, give them to me and I'll copy them and bring them back. So that's how you can deal. You have to take the responsibility for availability of your data. So there we have it. Confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Use those three lenses when you look at all of the vendors in your life, and I think you can avoid getting the ding-a-ling call that happened to Bob Jones. Madam Toastmaster.